Wonderful. Okay, so great to see a lot of familiar names and people who were at the last TechMeet event. Hope you enjoyed the previous one, and hopefully today will be just as successful as well. So yeah, welcome to the NTDC second TechMeet of the year. It's career development, the technical experience. So what we really want to do today is just have kind of open conversations, and I'll introduce a little bit more about TechMeet for those of you who weren't able to join in March, in the event we had in March. So just a bit of housekeeping. As I've said, it is being recorded, so I know people are still joining us. By remaining in the call, you are giving us permission to share that after the event. And please use the chat box freely. We do want this to be quite informal, not so much casual, but definitely informal and friendly, and provide that network for people who may haven't met yet and haven't had those conversations before. And then finally, at the end of the event, I am going to share a survey with people. So if you can fill it in, it's really useful for us to make sure this is something that's useful to you as technical staff, and to the wider community as well. And then also to improve on the next event, which is in your hands. So whatever is the most popular kind of topic, we're happy to run with that. So that's why we've come up with today's event, was based on the feedback from the last session as well. Just before we get started as well, our competition for technicians' photos is coming to a close soon. So that's closing on the 30th of June. And so please do submit photos of your work, of your team, of yourself. The first prize is £300 hard cash. And then we have 2 second prizes of £200. So yeah, a lot up for grabs. And any photos like this one in the background are from previous competitions. So exciting opportunity. And then just as a note for some events that we've got coming up, and we've got Employing an Apprentice in a Technical Role, Part 1 and 2 with Karen Bailey-Smith and Caleb Wright. And so that's next week, and then the following week after for Part 1 and 2. And I'm sure lots of you are aware, our partner forum in September will be hosted at Sheffield Hallam this year. So that's a really exciting change. So do sign up to that, and I'll just pop links to that in the chat as well. Okay, so welcome to TechMeet. Like we've said, it's a regular forum for people to discuss current events, best practice, share good news. And like we said, we do want to keep it informal and give people the opportunity really to have those conversations kind of outside of conference events and more regularly. And so we hope that you enjoy it this time as well. And if you did miss the first TechMeet, then you are welcome to find it on our YouTube. We do have a few other team members today who may be joining on the chat just to answer any questions. So if you see them popping up, that's why they'll be answering them. So career progression, the technical experience. We've got 3 speakers with us today, and they're covering a variety of areas. And really what we wanted it to cover was a lot of the feedback that we got from the first TechMeet was that people want to discuss which directions their careers can go in. So we've got 2 speakers within the network who have very different experiences, but we've actually found a bit of a similarity between them without knowing. And just to show you where you can go, up, sideways, round and round, and kind of back in a full circle as well. So just to introduce our speakers, we've got Jan Brett, Charlie Corcoran and Sally Bradley today. Sally will be covering fellowships for technical staff in various levels, but and she'll go through that with you in a bit more detail. And then Jan and Charlie are going to be sharing a little bit about their career pathways and the routes that they've taken as well. So I will stop rambling on now, and Jan, I'll let you take over.
Hello, thanks very much for introducing me. So I'm Jan Brett, and I work at the University of Liverpool, and my job title at the moment is Technical Development and Planning Officer. I'm based in the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences. So in that role, I get to work with all of our technical managers and our technical staff to provide opportunities for them to develop and all of those kind of things. So I'm just going to spend some time talking about how I got to this point, and it'll be a kind of whistle-stop tour through my career. I've got 1 slide, but we'll ping that up at an opportune moment. But really, I think the gist of the point I'd like to make through this is to look for opportunities all the time. Your career development is up to you to drive. So take opportunities that come to you, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone. And if you can't find opportunities, then make your own. You've got the power to do that. Okay, so I started off, we mentioned Sheffield Hallam University just before, so that's where I did my first degree. shockingly, next year will be the 30-year anniversary of when I graduated from Sheffield Hallam. So I did a BSc in biomedical technology, and that was great because that was a placement year. So I had a year working in between the second and third year. So the first part of that placement, I worked at the Health and Safety Executive, but they could only offer a 6-month placement. So I took it upon myself to sort of email around various industries in Sheffield to see if they could take me on. And I actually found my own placement then in the Department of Haematology at Northern General Hospital. So that was a new placement for the Sheffield Hallam, and they offered it year after that. So that was, I guess, the first example of me trying to drive something myself. So after my first degree, I thought I really loved any work to do with DNA. So I did a master's degree at Leicester University in molecular genetics. And again, that had a placement at that time. It was at AstraZeneca where I did my research project. So again, I really loved that working element. And I knew at that point that I didn't want to do a PhD and go the academic route. I wanted to work. So my master's was at Leicester Uni, and I stayed after it. There were opportunities that came up to stay in that department of biochemistry, where I became a grade 4 technician, research technician, or D, grade D as it was at the time. And then I think that was the series of short-term contracts I had at Leicester Uni then as a research technician. I did manage to go up to grade 5 at Leicester in the Centre for Mechanisms of Human Toxicity. And then I spotted a senior technician post at Nottingham University. So I went and commuted up to Nottingham for a bit and worked up there. But then an opportunity came back at Leicester as a research assistant. So I did a sideways move then, came back to Leicester. And I worked in that team then for about 3 to 4 years and loved it. And it was great. And we got some publications out. But I did spot at the time then that, it was kind of what you'd see in the PhD students and postgrads is that they'd all get to do various stints overseas. And, that was the norm for them. And me as a research assistant or research technician started questioning, why can't I do that? And I guess it's not something that we're seeing in the technical workforce. And we know from the Midlands Talent Commission report that technicians tend to not move around very much. And I do think we should challenge that. So around that time as well, I'd been to Australia on holiday and I absolutely loved it. So I just sort of was having a little daydream of how can I go and work over there? And I found a job on a recruitment site at the University of Queensland, sort of pinged off an application and was successful. So you can put my slide up now, Sav. That's okay. So this is just to prove that I was actually there, because it does still feel like a daydream. So I spent 3 years working at the University of Queensland as their scientific officer and lab manager. And the photo on the left not only proves I was there, but it also shows you that there are 2 technicians in that photo and one isn't the kangaroo. So I was actually very pregnant there with my son. He's now 19 and he's a technician at Liverpool Uni as well. So we were doing our bit for the technical workforce even back then. So yeah, spent 3 years there. It was brilliant, but we did move back to the UK. And again, once I got back here, I drove finding a job. So I sent my CV around the departments of what was biochemistry then in Liverpool, and ended up speaking to one of the PIs who created a research tech role for me. But I did have to take a step down in a grade to sort of start again in effect at Liverpool. But it was an opportunity, so I took it. And then within a couple of years, I managed to get a technical team leader post where I managed the research labs in the veterinary department. And I stayed there for about 14 years. So I think, another opportunity arose after that time where we were restructured, and people tend to dread things like that, but opportunities always come out of them as well. And this new post as technical development and planning officer was created. So I jumped and I took that opportunity, and I'm still there 3 years on. And I'm still taking those opportunities. Within that time, I've gone through professional registration and become a chartered scientist, and more recently a fellow of the IST. So I think the gist of my story is, take opportunities that arise. If you can't find them, make your own. And you've got to believe in yourself, because we can do these things as technical staff. It's not just down to those that have PhD to go and move around. So that's me in a whistle. If there's any questions, or if you wanted to come to that at the end.
Thank you, Jan. I'll just stop sharing for now, so that if people want to ask questions off camera, then they're welcome to. But yeah, very exciting, and yeah, definitely point about it's not just for PhD students and academics that can get those opportunities. And yeah, just open the floor to any questions. Feel free to go off mute, raise your hand, or pop it in the chat if anybody does have any.
In the chat. No.
No, all good. If anyone does have any coming up, then please do pop them in the chat, and then Jan, while people are listening, you can answer those if you're all right to do that, or Uzma does.
Yep.
No, I just wanted to say I love the way you said your career is yours to drive, and I think that's really important, that people take ownership of their career, which you've done and experienced loads. So well done you.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to drive it yourself, and you've got to take those opportunities. And when that opportunity to go to Australia landed in my lap, I was terrified, and I nearly backed out lots of times, but I didn't, and I'm so glad I didn't. As far as inspiring mentors, I would say everyone I've worked with has been inspiring to, and especially those students and the postdocs. And that's when I started questioning, why can't I do that as well? Why are they going to America for 2 years? And, so everyone that I work with has really been great. So thank you. Oh, thank you.
There you go, great role model. Yeah, thank you very much, Dan, and agree with the comments in the chat box as well. Okay, so I'll introduce our next person. So Charlie, I'll just share your slide, and then yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie. I work at the University of Edinburgh. I'm a zebrafish facility technician, and I'm based at the Human Genetics Unit, which is part of the College of Medicine and Veterinary Medicine. And I've been a zebrafish technician here for 8 years, a few of those in a different department, but still being a zebrafish technician. So I guess, yeah, I'm here to talk to you about my career and where I've come from, and yes, where I'm going. I don't have as many years to talk about. I've graduated from the University of St Andrews in 2011, but while I was there, I studied in James Cook University in Queensland. So that was our connection that we didn't know that we had. But unfortunately, I was only there for 6 months. But I loved it, and I would have loved to stay there for longer. And I wanted to echo what Jan said about seizing opportunities, and how progressing your career through taking opportunities that you didn't even know were there, or that you wanted, or that were a right fit for you. But you'll never know if you don't try. So yeah, it tied in quite nicely. So yeah, I graduated from St Andrews University with a degree in marine biology, after studying abroad on the Great Barrier Reef, which was really great. I did a lot of diving, and studied a lot of Australian vertebrates, which didn't really help with my degree, but was very interesting. And after that, I got a job at Loch Lomond Sea Life Aquarium, where I was an aquarist. And I was in charge of all the displays and the husbandry of the animals. It was quite a bit of a culture shock, going from all theory work to actually doing it hands-on, because there wasn't any kind of husbandry part of my degree. It was all kind of theory based. So I learned a lot in that first year there. From there, I moved due to living closer to this aquarium at Deep Sea World, and I was a presenter there for a few months. So I commuted for over an hour to get to Loch Lomond, and after a year I found that was a bit much, and so moved closer. And as a presenter, I had nothing to do with animal husbandry, but I interacted with the visitors and the customers to the aquarium, and talked all day about my knowledge of marine animals. After a few months there, I moved into the husbandry department, so I became an acarist again. And notably there, as an acarist, it was one of my roles was to dive with the sharks and feed the sharks. So every day I was in the big tank that you can see in that photo, feeding the sharks, the big sand tiger sharks, which was really cool. So I was there for 2.5 years, and sort of my husband at the time, well, my husband, who's still my husband, was doing a PhD at the time, and his funding had ended, and the company he was doing it with had a hiring freeze on. So we kind of had to like become adults really, and consider what he was going to do next. I needed to pay for our mortgage, and the acarist wage was not great. So I found an opportunity at Edinburgh University with zebrafish. And I moved to the Queen's Medical Research Institute with the University of Edinburgh, and became a zebrafish facility technician, where I'm responsible for the care and maintenance of the zebrafish in our research lab. We feed for them, we monitor their health, we breed them, we monitor water quality, and filtration. So it was taking the skills that I learned at Deep Sea World and applying them in a more research setting. This was my first foray into being a technician, and I enjoyed it. And after 2 years there, I found out I was pregnant, so I took a bit of a break for 3 years to be at home with my kids. I did try being a childminder during those 3 years, but it wasn't really for me. And the opportunity to come back to Edinburgh to be a zebrafish technician, but in a different facility, came up. So I took that, and I was lucky enough to get that job, where I do pretty much the same thing as I did there, but just in a different place. And I've now been here for nearly 5 years, and I became a named animal care and welfare officer 2 years ago, which just basically gives me more responsibility in the welfare of the fish. And more recently, I've joined the technician steering committee through the whole university, so I'm starting to branch out into more things and supporting the technicians through the whole university. So yeah, I mean, that's my career in a nutshell, I guess. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Charlie. And yeah, interesting about the childminding. It's looks like a group of children are more difficult to care for than a group of sharks.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
which you might not have expected, but I think is probably true. So has anybody got any questions for Charlie or Jan before we move on to the next speaker about what they've done, how they've got there? No.
Just a comment really, in that, you know, where we've ended up, I guess when we started out, we could never imagined of having got there. So it's never been a plan as such, other than doing what you really love and then taking opportunities to go and take the next step, whatever that might be. So, and I'm sure that's echoed for most of us. I don't think we ever set off at 18 thinking, oh, you might have done though, but I think generally you find people, their career grows with them as they take opportunities, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think like I always feel a bit envious of people who have like the big 5-10 year plans. People ask me, I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of do what comes up and hope for the best, really. But yeah, I definitely agree.
I think often those plans in any industry really will often go on their own paths anyway, won't they? Well, I'm sure some people manage to stick to them, but I think they quite often can veer off. And yeah, quite interesting to hear you coming from that industry-based role and then into the universities. And I think most technicians here are from university. I can see a few school technicians, so nice to see you all. Yeah, so thank you both very much. And if you do have any questions while we're going through, do please pop them in the chat. Comment from Wendy saying both really impressive and interesting careers. And I'm sure, yeah, many more years of that to come as well. And yeah, I'll introduce our next speaker, who will be going over fellowships with Advanced HE and banging the drum about that, so to speak. So Sally, are you happy sharing your slides, or would you like me to?
Shall I share them?
Yeah, if that's easier for you, yeah, that should be fine. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Just bear with me while I find them.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and then thank you both, Charlie and Jan.
Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead, take your time.
Right, let me go back. I've got them all ready to launch, and now they've disappeared.
Classic. Only when you need them will they disappear.
They're not coming up. Why aren't they coming up?
Right, it says you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, why isn't it going?
Can't say
Isn't it
anything.
sharing
Do
my?
you want me to share for you, and you can tell me when to click through?
There. Have you got it now?
Yeah, we're up. Yay, lovely.
Right.
Right, take it away, Sally. I'll put myself back on mute.
Except we're starting at the final slide, so just bear with me. There we go. Hello, I'm Sally Bradley, and I'm not a technician. However, there is a linkage, Jan, because my academic, well, it wasn't, I was in professional services, started at Sheffield Hallam. And part of my reason for being here is the research that I did at Sheffield Hallam about what technicians do. So it's titled, I Do That, How Can I Claim Recognition for my Impact on Students? Because of the research, I know just how much impact you have on students and how much teaching you do. So let me give you a little bit of background. I apologise if you were at York for the Technician Commitment Awards, Signatory Awards last year, because you're going to hear a bit of the same. Why am I committed? I'm not a technical person. I had a career in banking. I was a software engineer. I've taught computing. I've been a librarian. I've been a pedagogic researcher, and I've been an educational developer. And now I'm an executive coach. So why am I bothered about technicians getting recognised? Firstly, and this is my call out, I have a family member who is a technical manager in Canada. And whilst we joke about the fact that he just presses a button, I do appreciate he does more than press a button. But what he does in terms of research and supporting researchers, I'm fully aware of. When is there anybody from Leeds here? Leeds University? When my son was doing his undergraduate degree and his dissertation, the first person acknowledged in his dissertation was the technician that he worked with. His undergraduate dissertation was it's been cited in at least 3 PhDs, and he could not have done that without the support of the technician in sports and exercise science. So I've got a personal commitment. But also, when I was at Sheffield Hallam, I did a research into why students stay at university. And the technicians came out really strongly in the fact that you are accessible. And we talk a lot now, this was over 15, 20 years ago. Now there's a lot of talk about student mental well-being, and the report is out about what technicians do to support student mental well-being, but this was before then. And what came out of that was that students could talk to the technicians because you spoke in an accessible language, you were accessible, you weren't marking their work, so they could admit to not understanding. And it came across as being you were a really important group that wasn't on the radar at that time. I then, following that, did some research into how much teaching technicians actually do. and it was staggering. But as I moved at Sheffield Hallam, I was responsible for HA fellowships at the time, but nobody was coming forward from technicians to get HA fellowships. But I knew how much work you were doing with students and the difference that you made. So I am committed to raising technicians' profile and getting the recognition that you deserve, because you are making a huge difference to the student experience. And that's how I became a member of the Technician Commitment Steering Board, because I'd had a conversation with somebody and said, you're so positive about what technicians are doing, you need to come and join us. So that's my personal commitment, even though I'm from a background that is not related. Everybody in the room, I apologise to the school technicians because this is only relevant to higher education. I apologise for that. But I want you to be recognised for that contribution that you make to supporting students, and recognise what you're doing in terms of the student experience. So in terms of, and it's all about students, and it's about not learning and teaching, but student support. So think about the students that you're working with, your undergraduates, your postgraduates, your staff. Just think about what you're doing in terms of supporting their learning as well as teaching. So just jot down 4 different ways you support students and think about those different student groups. I'll give you a minute or so. Or just think, put them into chat. Can I see chat if I'm sharing? Let me see. Put them into chat.
I can read them out for you, Sally.
I've put it up.
Got it.
Perfect. So just put them into chat. There's no right or wrong answers, but just think about the different things that you are doing to support students, from induction to that final graduation. Fantastic. Keep going. These are fantastic. There is such a diversity and wealth. Yep, absolutely. Now, just in that 1 minute, you've identified many things that you are doing, and I'm sure those that haven't contributed are doing similar things or different things. If you're doing those things, then you can claim associate fellowship if you're just supporting students, or if you are designing and planning, you can go for a fellowship. So yes, if you are supporting students, if you're doing any teaching, absolutely yes. And we have people that are committed to supporting students, so that if you're not involved with NTU in Nottingham, they have the Student Maker Club, and that was for Kerry found that there were some students that were terrified of the workshops, even though they were doing courses that required studio work. And so they developed the student makers, and actually they got staff involved as well. So all voluntary, but just overcame that anxiety. In Bath and in the arts, there are technicians going for it as a cohort, and York St John University, the technicians are going as a cohort, Bath University. So we've got many people, and I wrote, as I say, I am absolutely committed that you should get recognition, and this is different to our SciTech, but I don't want you to be unseen and unsung heroes behind the scene, because if you can articulate what you are doing, what you're doing, why you are doing it that way with that group of students, because you will work differently with an undergraduate student, first year undergraduate student to a final year student. You'll work differently with a PhD student, and you'll work differently with a new member of staff. So if you can just think what you do in terms of supporting them and why you're doing it in that approach, there will be people in your institutions that will be able to help you with the theory behind it if you're not familiar with learning and teaching theory. But don't get hung up on the theory. You can read about that. It's knowing what you do in your practice and knowing how you know it works. So why do you do something with a first year undergraduate differently, and how do you know that it's effective? So think about evaluation, but you can claim fellowship from just doing student support, or if you are designing and planning with the in collaboration with the academics, if you are actually doing teaching face-to-face or online or hybrid, if you are doing any assessment, if you are creating, think about the field trips and what you have to do. Think about those environments that you work in, the labs, the different environments. If you can articulate what you're doing and why you're doing that work in that way with those students. And then the last thing is CPD. If you can talk about those 5 things, then you can claim fellowship. And that's just about your practice. There's no trick questions. This is you being able to say, do you know what? I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. I know it works. Why not get the recognition? If you're in a different position and you are a manager and you are working with your colleagues to get them into a position of supporting those students, you can claim senior fellowship. You can work with them, and your leadership, your influence on their practice and how they work with students would enable you to do senior fellowship. Only 10% of the fellowship population for advanced HE is still termed HEA fellowships. Only 10% have senior fellowship. Why not the technicians? We do have principal fellows, which is the category for strategic leaders, because we have technicians who are leaders in universities, and Tim Savage has got principal fellowship. So there is something for everybody. Yes, it takes time, and yes, you have to think about what you're doing in your practice, but actually by writing it down and articulating it, it will help prepare you for that next move, for that next job opportunity. And today has been about taking those opportunities. If you've already identified what you are doing and why you're doing it and how you know it works, that's a great start to looking at that next job. So if you are doing that, if you are working with students or staff, then think about it. You can do that. You can claim HEA fellowship, and there will be somebody in your institution in a central unit, either Ask HR or the Central Educational Development Unit. They come under different titles, but they will be able to support you in getting your fellowship at whatever category is appropriate to your experience. But give it a try. If you're thinking, could I do that? Try for associate fellowship. You need to talk about one thing and then one CPD. You talk about CPD, and having spoken to colleagues at York University, they sent me a list of 35 different CPD activities that they had been involved with in the last year. So I know you're doing plenty of CPD. How is that changing your practice? How is that informing your practice? If you can do that, you can claim a fellowship. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Sally. That was, really, really insightful. And I think quite a lot of comments already in the chat, and we'll again open up to anybody that wants to share, but I'll just make sure we've not missed anything in the chat first. But yeah, really, really useful. And I think that's the key thing of people not only getting the recognition externally, but actually recognizing it within themselves first. It's kind of that first step into going down that process. And so yeah, thank you very much again. We've got a question here. Is this something a technical manager can go for, as my role is remote from the students and more about supporting the technicians?
Absolutely, that is senior fellowship.
Okay, there we go. There's your answer, Tracy. And then somebody's put, I agree, I got my FHEA fellowship 4 years ago. It was really interesting and useful process, and it has helped inform my work since too. So that's great. If anybody has gone through this process or is currently going through it and would like to come off mic and share, that would be great if you can maybe talk us through how that was for you. And then another one here, which I think you probably answered already, but from Angela, if you don't teach, can you still apply for the fellowship?
It's the support, so long as it's involving students and student support, you can do that. There is a dimension in the framework that allows you to do student support.
And I think that'll be every single technician, no doubt. And then Bill's from Edinburgh Napier said that a couple of technicians at Edinburgh are in the process of moving forward with the fellowship, and we've already received AFHEA and now feel confident enough with our practice to try and move forward with fellow. Fingers crossed. So yeah, definitely fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Yeah. This is a joy. This is an absolute, I'm talking to the converted.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of people are saying that they're in the process as well. Somebody's just submitted their portfolio for fellow. Cardiff Uni run a scheme to get you through over 6 months. And then Jan said a fine example of a great opportunity to take that could open doors. Yeah, and agreed, Jan. And then
I want to celebrate this. When I tried to identify the technicians, we've got 170,000 fellows globally, right? And technicians are difficult to identify because you don't have a standard job title. But I could only find 600 technicians, and when I spoke at Liverpool University itself has 650 technicians. So there are a lot of technicians out there. So if you've got a fellowship, talk to your colleagues, because we need to increase this number, because you are so important to the student experience.
Yeah, very well said, thank you. And another question which people might have answers to themselves, or Sally, you might be able to answer. Do you know what sort of careers or main career roles have technicians with the fellowship gone into? For example, have any kind of become an academic?
Yes, and I have colleagues at Sheffield Hallam that started as technicians and became academics. But the technicians that I talk to don't want to lose that practice. So you can still use it to progress to the technical managers. You are identifying your leadership skills in going for senior fellowship. And as I say, Tim Savage is at one of the arts universities. I can't just remember which one, but he's at the senior table. So he's used his principal fellowship to recognise the strategic leadership he's making in those universities. So you don't have to lose your technical identity, but it opens doors to academia too.
Yes, it's like Janet said, it's opening those doors to different opportunities and options. I think that's the key thing. And then Karen, I'm going to ask you to come off mic and explain your comment if possible.
So, hi Sally, we have met briefly at the Science Museum last year.
Hello.
So David Smith obviously flies our flag from the academic side. No, just to say that we have a whole team of people under academic diversity and development that support anybody at Hallam going through this process. And when I say support, it's right down to bespoke sessions, writing retreats. So it helps you carve out that time to do the application, and getting technical staff involved in that is really helping them as well understand what technical staff do. So it's very much a two-way street, particularly, Sally, as you say, at the moment, with lower numbers of technical staff applying. We've got quite a number of done associate fellow, a couple have done fellowship, but I'm working with a few of the teams at the moment to increase that. So have a hunt around your institution. There probably will be a team of people, yeah, but because it's quite often focused with the academic staff, the technical staff just don't know about it. It's not that it's not necessarily not there. It might be that you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you can't find anybody, go to say HR, OD and say, right, who are the team? And they'll be
And-
able to tell you.
And if in doubt, drop me an email and I will find the right person in the institution to
Thanks, Sally.
and what I would say is, by going for a fellowship on an internal scheme, you are raising the profile of technicians within the institution, because if it's an internal scheme that's accredited by Advance HE, it is reviewed by colleagues in your institution. And it isn't a technical example, but I had a colleague from engineering who was reading a librarian application, and they said, I didn't know that they did that sort of thing. And that academic then had them working on validation and created a much better environment for both him and his students, because he wasn't aware what librarians did. And it will be the same for technicians. So it raises the profile with people who may not have encountered you. So please.
And therefore, Sally Jolly creates the job opportunities that Jan was talking about. So yeah. There you go.
Lovely, thank you both. I'm just going to keep whizzing through because we've gotten quite a lot of comments and questions coming through. Somebody's asked, or somebody's made the comment saying, going for it, thanks Sally. So that's, you'll be chuffed to see that. And then someone Wendy from Swansea said, we have plenty of technicians here at Swansea Uni signed up, but have a problem with lack of time to do it at the moment. And I'm sure a lot of people could relate to that as well. So if anybody does have any tips, please do feel free to pop them in the chat, or how to get that time kind of approved to do these kind of things would be great. And then how has this been advertised? I was unaware of the fellowship. I think that probably links to it. It is advertised, but perhaps to a different audience. But
did you share the document that NTDC did about examples from practice?
Yep, I'll send that in the chat now, actually. I'll pop that in the chat before we finish. Yeah, so that would be a good route for people to go. So there are resources out there, and we will get that sent out for people as well. But again, like you were saying, Sally, it's that people may not be aware, because it's often academics that it's being targeted at. Okay, next one we've got of 12 years ago, looking to apply for senior, hopefully now leading on the technician commitment. I find some colleagues just don't see the benefit. Can you say anything to that?
There are many academics who don't see the benefit either, but it is globally recognised. It's a mark of esteem. It's a mark of parity with the academics. So in terms of I've been in a privileged position because I tend to work with people who are committed to students. And I know there are some people who are happy doing what they're doing, but it's just consolidating, getting them to recognise the difference they are making. And that makes a difference to esteem. But the way I would do it is let those that are keen do it and talk about it, and you will find it snowballs and people start thinking, well, perhaps I should be doing this. So don't make people, but if others are getting promotion, are finding new opportunities, having got fellowship, then it may just offer those opportunities. But you'll get 10, 20% who don't want to do it. I'll be honest. Fellowships came out, the Professional Standards Framework came out in 2006. HEA had fellowships before then. And people at the time said it would go away. And we're now in 2023. It's not gone away. They are there. They're recognised globally. So it's worth having, but don't make people do it because they will be miserable. Because there's a lot of soul searching. And certainly it was the first time I had articulated my practice to anybody. And that is quite scary because you're talking to an audience that don't know you. So get a group together who are interested and keen, and let it snowball from there.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question, and they are flying in, so apologies, Sally, we're making you work today. How long does the fellowship last once attained?
Forever.
Forever. There we go. There you go, Andy.
You don't have to demonstrate CPD. There is a sort of an intention that you will continue to do CPD, but it's a one-off. You don't have to reapply after 3 years.
Yeah, so once you've got it, it's yours to keep. And then thank you, Darren, for sending that link through. That's going to be really helpful for people if people want to scroll up and save that as well. And then Denise, who I believe is a school science technician, who's attended quite a few of our events, has said, is there anything that science technicians can apply for? Because they don't always have the recognition they deserve. And if anybody has any suggestions or has come from a school background or knows people within that and does know of anything, then please do pop it in the chat, because I think it is something that often as a group in higher education, it's not really in our vision. But if people do have any suggestions, or Sally, if you know anything,
I think go for the Science Council's I don't know.
Yeah,
tech.
I think Denise has that. Is that right, Denise? I don't know. You're welcome to come off mute. I don't know if you want to share your experience.
Yes, she has.
Yeah. Yeah, she has. It's in her name, so she definitely has. Yeah, so I think that is probably an issue, and Denise, please give me a nod or shake that a lot of school technicians potentially feel that there's yes, that's confirmed. So yeah, if people do have anything, then please do feel free to send them across, and we can forward them to Denise as well, that can apply to school and science technicians. And then we've got another question that somebody's applying, but will be going into a different role at a different institute. Do I have to start the whole process over again, or can I use whatever I learned and have done in my previous role for the application?
Yes. If you are submitting in your new institution, check out what their criteria are, because they may do something like they may have a portfolio, they may do something different. If you're applying direct to Advanced HE, it will be the same process.
Fabulous, thank you. And then we've got one more. Science techs can apply for fellowship too. I'm not sure, Cam, if that's applying to science technicians within universities or school technicians, so please do confirm with me either way. And then Bill, I don't know if you want to come off mute, Bill, and share this, so I'm not grabbling on too much.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, really all I was trying to say was I achieved associate fellowship in 2015 and was one of the first technicians at Napier to move forward with the process, and I found I got quite a lot out of it in terms of my practice, and certainly gave in the immediate sort of after achieving associate fellow, gave presentations and talks to other members of the technical team, to the point where now most of our technical team have some form of fellowship. So I'm in, as I mentioned earlier, in the process of moving forward to try for fellowship, and certainly as of yesterday on a coach to the Scott Tech conference, meeting up with a friend who's a technician at another institution. I've been asked if I would give the presentation at their institution as well. So just yeah, it's I hear what you're saying about letting the positive experiences shine through, and that positive word of mouth will spread. So definitely.
Great, thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. And yeah, really positive experience there, and hearing how it's kind of spread across Napier as well is yeah, it's great news. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. And sorry to pull you on camera, a bit cruel of me. So we've got something from Tracy saying that she's just read the institution's fellowship registration form, and it mentions teaching in every pathway. I don't teach. Sally, can I contact you? Am I okay to pop your email address in the chat,
Yes,
Sally, for everybody to?
That's fine. I'm retired from Advanced HE, but I do still do some work, and they know that I'm working with technicians. So drop me it to sally.bradley.coach@gmail.com. Yeah, they've missed you out. It is about teaching and supporting learning, and supporting learning is the key to this.
There you go. So I've popped Sally's email within the chat box, so if anybody wants to save that as well. And then Cam has responded to the question I asked for Denise, saying, I believe only SciTechs and HE can go for fellowship. What are your thoughts on Science Council registration versus fellowship?
Different. Well, no, I was going to say I did a project a few years ago about Seaside Tech, and mapped it against the Advanced HE. We couldn't get dual badging, but if you've got Seaside Tech, then you are in the realms of HEA fellowships, but you need to focus on the students rather than the research. But again, it is purely for higher education. So I don't know if the College for Teachers is doing anything, or the FE sector are doing anything. But let's see what the new institute comes out with, because they may be looking broader than that. So
yeah, hopefully scope for a bit more.
Yeah.
In that area. Yeah, so sorry Denise, it's not really a concrete answer that you might have hoped for, but yeah, hopefully in the future it's something we can see a bit more of. And then I'll just take this final point, and if there's anything following up that we don't get to answer today, I'll forward them on and get any answers sent out in a follow-up email. But just a comment from Sarah saying, I thought that I didn't do any teaching, but I found that I did lots when I applied. Do you do inductions, training, offer pastoral support? If so, this counts. So yeah, I think, yeah, great point, and kind of echoing everything that you've been saying, Sally, that you might not think of it as teaching, but that's kind of exactly part of it. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much, Sally, for that bombardment of questions. So very well handled, and thank you everyone for engaging with that as well. And like I said, I've popped Sally's email in the chat, so as she's kindly said, you can follow up with her, or if you do want to come directly to us with any questions. And thanks again to Jan and Charlie very much for sharing their stories. Really interesting to see how people, like Jan said, it's not linear. They're going up, down, sideways multiple times to get to different areas. Like Charlie said, sometimes you just go with the flow. And I said at the start of the session that we have got a very short survey, and it is only a couple of questions. So I'm just going to pop a link in the chat to it, and if you're able to complete that, it just asks about today's TechMeet and also the next TechMeet. So you kind of have your say here, and if you do want to have something in particular spoken about or cover a few different areas, if you pop it in that and it's majority or more or less, you know, there's more than a few people suggesting it, then it is something that we'll go for. And our next TechMeet, I will just share the screen with you so people can see it. I believe that's sharing. Yeah, so you can scan that as well to fill out the survey. Or if you do want to contact me directly about anything or any questions from today's, then my email's just there as well. And that's our next TechMeet. So it'll be on September the 20th. Again, 1 till 2, it's another Wednesday, and hopefully we'll see many of you there. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you at the next TechMeet, hopefully. And thanks again to our speakers. Thanks all.